Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
I feel honored not only to provide a personal perspective on Doc, but also because of the remarkable audience we have here. I expected it was going to be University of Michigan students, but I see among the most serious people that I know who are interested in the history and culture of black people, and specifically of African Americans in Detroit in this audience. You are about to get a master's class. As much as you know by listening to Dr. Desjardins. I don't remember how many years ago it was that we met, but it was at Kinko's, where the Wayne State University Welcome Center is now, on Woodward at Warren. And the very first time that I met Doc, he took my measure, which he's prone to do, asked me what I did, and I mentioned I was an historian, and the first thing that came out of his mouth is, "Did you know?" That's when my education began. And it has continued ever since, because every time I talk with Doc, I'm learning something about the richness and the uniqueness of our heritage. I wanted to give you some examples of how Doc has helped me as an historian. Some of you may have seen my 8-part series on the Detroit Rebellion of 1967. This ran in the Michigan Citizen in 2007 on the 40th anniversary. I spoke with Doc when I was putting the series together. Excuse me, have some water, please. Forgive me. Thank you, Kafensi. I showed Doc this photograph, which I'll pass around after I finish. This is a Detroit News photograph that was taken on July 25th, 1967, which is the second day of the rebellion. And for the uninitiated, we did not have a riot. A riot is an event of mindless violence. The reason that many black people call it rebellion is because we recognized that we had something to rebel against, namely the super exploitation of the communities that we had been crammed into. This is taken at Canfield and John R. Some of you will know that this store on the corner here is still here. This area was later raised to create room for the medical center. I showed this photograph to Doc, and he told me what the store was at the time. It was a corner party store. And then to my astonishment, he looked all the way in the corner here. And I'll pass this around afterward, and you can see a house. And there's a sign jutting out from the house, and you can only see 2 initials, a P on top and an R on the bottom. And Doc said that was the Pelican Restaurant number 2. Soul food restaurant. And he said the food over there wasn't good. You had to go to Pelican number 1. So when Doc identified that, he also told me the history of this area. He asked me, was I aware of the scene? Now, I have a rather unusual background in that I'm the son of a medical doctor who used to work for the old city physician's office. All of you, I think, or most of you are old enough to remember that City's Physicians was an innovative program based in Receiving Hospital that sent doctors out to make house calls. My mother, Dr. Edith Lee, Dr. Darwin Belden, who I'm named after, Paul Darwin Lee, Dr. Brooks, fanned out into the city to be able to minister to the needs of poor people. So I grew up eating in everybody's kitchen. So that means the west side, the old west side, which means west of West Grand Boulevard, the east side, north end, the old north end. You got to be real old to know that the old north end is north of the Davidson Freeway. So there's no part of Detroit that I didn't grow up in, and I thought that I understood the history and culture of my city until I met Doc. And I had never heard of this area called the Scene. So when Doc told it to me, I asked my editor, Teresa Kelly, how much room I had to write the cut line of the caption for this photograph. She gave me a certain number of words, and I almost cried. I'm going to read you what my original cut line was, which is 3 times as long as the space that I had. Bygone heyday. A drugstore on the northeast corner of East Canfield at John R. in the Medical Center District, which was looted and set ablaze during the rebellion, July 25th, 1967. According to former resident Dr. Jiam Desjardins, this area, which ran along John R. between Canfield and Hancock, was known as the Scene, a thriving entertainment district in the 1940s and 50s that featured several jazz venues. The famous Flame Show Bar was on the southeast corner of this intersection. The Frolic Show Bar was across John R. between Canfield and Garfield. Randolph Wallace's Garfield Hotel, which featured the Garfield Lounge in the Walhall Room, was directly across from the Frolic on the west side of John R. 1 block north on Garfield between Woodward and John R. was Sonny Wilson's Mark Twain Hotel, which featured the Swamp Room Lounge, the Michigan Federated Democratic Club, site of the notorious 1979 killing, beheading, and mutilating of 3 people, and the Randor Hotel, which resurrected the Garfield Lounge after its namesake hotel burned down, and the Chesterfield Lounge was on the west side of John R. between Forest and Hancock. A portion of the sign of the second Pelican Cafe between Garfield and Forest could be seen to the right of the corner hotel in the background between the drugstore and the light post. The former drugstore is now the Midtown Corner Cafe, part of the new Midtown Lofts development. That, I was later told by my editor, was an article in itself. Similarly, I was asked to write for African American Family Magazine an article about Malcolm X's years in Detroit. As most of you know, he was raised in Lansing. But when he was on the street hustling, he hustled in the valley, specifically in the valley and the scene. In fact, one of the reasons that he went to prison in 1945, he and one of his friends met somebody, ended up staying with him, and when they left, most of this gentleman's property left with him. The apartment that they stole this stuff from is seen right next to this. And Malcolm fled to Lansing, and police got him. His eldest brother, Wilfred, paid $1,000 to get him out on bond. Malcolm skipped bond and went to Boston, where he started stealing again and ended up in prison. Fortunately, because that's where he came into contact with the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad and was able to reform himself. But in writing this article on Malcolm X's years in Detroit, I went into his Garveyite past. And I noted that Malcolm's father, the Reverend Early Little, used to visit the Detroit Garvey movement. For those of you who know the history of the Garvey movement, you were aware that this is the largest race uplift movement in modern history. At its height in 1926 and 1927, there were some 1,200 branches, chapters, and divisions in 40 countries on 4 continents with a membership estimated in the millions. And the Detroit division was known as Division 125 at 1516 Russell, which is just south of Gratiot, where Eastern Market is. And I mentioned this in my article, and I described the Garvey headquarters, the Liberty Hall, as being in Black Bottom. Doc looked at me, and he feels kindly towards me, calls me his nephew, so I knew I was lucky. He gave me this kindly look, and he said, well, that's not really in the valley, it's 3 blocks from it. Then he patiently explained to me the boundaries of Black Bottom, which I'd never heard before. Then he explained the boundaries of Paradise Valley, then the North End, then Cohen Gardens. After Doc did that, I checked every secondary source that I could, including websites. Not a single secondary source lists the precise boundaries of Detroit's majority black neighborhoods. Not one that I'm aware of. Not the book on the east side, not the book on the west side, not the book on the north end. None of them do. You had a biographer of C.L. Franklin who has Paradise Valley extending down to West Grand Boulevard instead of the Fisher Freeway. Doc laughed when I showed him this and says, pretty soon they're going to have it going to the State Fair. We're going at an 8 mile. One of the things that I suspect, Doc and I have never talked about why he picked up on me the way that he did. But I suspect that the reason is because I suspect that Doc saw in me a younger version of himself in some respects. My best friend H.R. Lewis said to me once, you have a highly impressionistic sensibility. And I said, what does that mean? He said, you're a sponge. Doc grew up in part on the North End. And as Doc explained to me, he grew up on the good part of the North End, which means west of Oakland, where the homes are made of brick. East of Oakland, they're made of frame. And Doc grew up around where Charles Diggs stayed, and the doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs were. His family was deeply involved in the valley in business. They were even involved in what we call the policy, which is Chicago called the numbers, or what white people call the illegal lottery. So Doc grew up not only deeply involved in the black cultural life of Detroit, but unlike most of his contemporaries, Doc was alert to what was happening as he was participating in it. So he was both participant as witness.
Yes.
I've been in the storm for 40 years, and I've never met anybody who was able to do both. I have maintained a certain distance because I want to observe and record. Doc did both. So when Doc, starting from the time that Doc was a child, when he would attend an event, he'd grab the flyer. If he went to a show, he'd save the ticket stub. As soon as he started being able to use the camera, he did that. He was keeping journals and diaries. He was recording history as he was living it and helping make it. So when I say that Doc may have seen a little of himself in me, that's why I say little, because why I tend to have, as my friend said, a highly attuned impressionistic sensibility, I haven't done that much. The main thing that Doc has done for my work is helped me put the black history of Detroit in perspective. So for example, I would show Doc something like this. These are photographs of Vic's log cabin pit barbecue on the north end, on Oakland. I grew up not far from this. But what Doc was able to help me do when I would show him photographs or something like this is a flyer for Elmer and Carl's House of Music on Owen in Oakland. They not only had a music shop, but they also had a store that showed instruments and musical school. Doc helped me place all this in perspective. And you are fortunate in that Doc will now help you place our entire history in perspective, and I hope there's time for you to answer questions so you can enrich your understanding. Because I believe from now to the end of time, there will be nobody who better understands black life in this city than Dr. Jiam Desjardins.
Absolutely.